Well, hello. Well, hello.
Hello.
Well,
Hello.
yeah, I got to keep it animated every time we come on. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Pencil, your favorite pandemic podcast, led by cartoonists of good standing. I'm Jamar
And
Nicholas.
and pandemic free.
That's right. Yeah, COVID free. That's what's up. We keep it COVID free in the 2020. I'm Jamar Nicholas.
We're washing our hands at the beginning, the middle, and at the end of every episode.
You know, it's funny. My lady gave me this kind of like a pocket hand sanitizer. Like it's like a little like a spray bottle, and you just like keep it on you like claret, just like tip it back and you catch a little gargle. But it's just like everything you touch just.
Now make sure that's the kind that's not poisonous. Right?
Oh, right. I read about the poisonous ones. Yeah, don't use that one. If we can avoid it, don't use the poisonous hand sanitizer. Welcome back to Pencil to Pencil, brought to you by our good friends at Graphicsly, who make Clip Studio Paint, the cartoonist tool, and also our good buddy John Morrow over at Tomorrow's. I do this all the time. Tomorrow's Publishing, who is the publisher for our magazine, Draw Magazine, along with other things you may enjoy, like the Brick Journal for Lego enthusiasts, the Kirby Collector. Does he still do rough stuff?
No, Bob McLeod stopped that a couple of years ago.
That was such a cool man.
But you can still get back issues.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, go cop that. And also I'm joined by my good bud Mike Manley, Modern Master. Say hey, Mike. Do you want me to stop shouting you out? You're just like, ugh.
Hello.
Hey, before we bring our guest on, I want to just say that we had a lot of fun on, was that Saturday, where we did the comic boot camp, where we took the whole episode and went from script to the concepted page. Mike Manley took a script and we broke it down and drew a page right in front of your eyes. We seem to got a lot of great feedback about that, Mike. What did you think of the episode?
Yeah. We had a lot of good positive feedback. It was basically like you were in one of my classes. Mm-hmm. It was the length of a class, so you basically got a free seminar on how to take a script and turn it into a comic book page layout. Mm-hmm. So where our thoughts are to try to do something like that, maybe like once a month to do.
Yeah.
So if there's something that you're interested in, you could always send us an email and say, hey, how about how to draw back teeth?
I need to work on my back teeth game. It's kind of weak right
now. Or, world building or inking or, penciling or, things like that.
Yeah. We had a great time, and it's good to kind of break up the interviews with some solid cartooning knowledge and know-how. So remember, we're not only good-looking dudes; we also know what we're doing. So don't forget that we have. That's right.
A lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure. So just being so handsome.
So
now I got to know what I'm doing too.
So also we might have some new viewers. Every time we bring a different guest on, they bring people with them, even if they know it or not. So if you're here joining us for the first time on Facebook, on our Facebook page, hello, welcome, have a seat. For anybody that's watching on our YouTube channel, we're streaming there live too. Also, hello. I can't see you. So if you want to comment or chat with us or ask a question to our guests, please type it in the comments and I'll try to get to it. But just remember, we can't get to everything. So if we don't get to you, no tears.
However, even though Jamar cannot see you, I can. Stop doing that right now.
That's right. You're gonna go blind. So cut it out. All right, you guys. So I have a very special guest in the green room. We talk about this person in very revered tones. Everybody in the industry from my side of the fence kind of, I hate to say worship because that sounds really like weird, but it's tough because I met him and we know each other a little bit, but it's always I get a little weird when I'm around him because it's like, oh, yo, that's my shot. So we'd like to bring in Dawud Anyabwile, a co-creator and illustrator of BROTHERMAN, Dictator of Discipline, a really big high watermark in my cartooning makeup. One thing that I was introduced to BROTHERMAN in the very early 90s when I was still in art school and trying to figure out that I wanted to do comics, but I didn't see a lane for me, and everything that I saw in the printed page didn't look like something I did, or didn't talk to me, or didn't have a voice. And when BROTHERMAN came out, a light went off. And I'm sure that we've heard this a million times. So, but he basically, him and his brothers birthed a generation of cartoonists from their work. So I'm very excited to bring them on the show, and we can chop it up. And if you guys have any questions, like I said, put them in the comments. All right, let's not keep them waiting anymore. Dawud Anyabwile, welcome to the podcast. Hey, bro.
How's everybody doing?
Good. I hope I didn't embarrass you with that.
Not at all, man. And actually, how you said, like, you hear something, say, hey, you probably heard it a million times, but sometimes people don't realize, like, even when you hear something, it's different. Even if somebody says something that's similar to what somebody else said, it's different because it's coming from somebody else. It's different experience. And y'all know, as artists and creators, we're in our quiet space. So when we're creating in a quiet space, and then we put it out into the world. Yeah. And then, you're selling books, but you don't know what people think. So even if people think that you're great, you don't know that they're thinking that, because until they share it. And then when they share it, you could be that artist where it goes to your head and say, yeah, I am great, which you should feel confident in yourself and say, I am great. But at the same time, it's really more of an affirmation that you feel better, like, oh, okay, let me get back onto the art table. It kind of inspires you to want to do something else, do more, because now you know that people are appreciating what you're doing. Because when you're in your own space, you're kind of like satisfying yourself, but you don't know how other people feel. So each time somebody shares a story, sometimes they think, oh man, I'm sorry, I've been going on and on. It's like, no, I want to hear it, because I want to know how it impacted you or how it affected you. And then that makes me want to go back and create more. So, I just appreciate it,
Oh, that's cool. It energizes you in a way.
And there's that weird time between when you create it and then it's being born, in between your art table and the printer and the person reading. And that could be a long time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have been doing it long enough now that you had people like Jamar who were reading it when they're younger, and now they come 20 years later and tell you that was very inspirational to me, which is even different than just somebody I like it. You know what I mean? When it actually impacts people and makes them want to actually do, make a comic themselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Were there people that you met when you started that were like that were like, key creators that you felt helped spur your creativity when you were younger?
Yeah. I always say there was, like, the iconic people that inspired me was, first and foremost, I say Mort Drucker from Mad Magazine. Because my oldest brother, he used to always collect Mad Magazine, so it was always in our house. And I liked it because it was, like, loose and gestural. And after we came out with BROTHERMAN, he was speaking at a School of Visual Arts in New York. And I went up to, because actually I was living in North Jersey at the time. We had just came out with BROTHERMAN. And he was doing a presentation with Sam Viviano. And I really dug, like, them showing process and all this other stuff. And then afterwards, I went up there and, I had my little comic book. And I was like, Mort Drucker, I made a comic book, would you like to see it? And I want to give it to you, for all the years of you inspiring me. And then, you don't know how he's going to respond, but he was real cool. He said, are you going to sign this for me? I was like, yeah, okay. You know, so I gave it to him, and he said, I'm gonna put this in my archives. And I was like, wow, you know, so that even added to the impact of like, man, he's real cool on top of that, because he could have brushed me off and said, beat it, kid. We got hundreds of people behind you. You know what I mean? But you know, he put in his archives, so that was cool. And then Overton Lloyd from Parliament Funkadelics, he's the one who created Sir Nose Devoid of Funk and did a lot of the artwork for George Clinton, him and Pedro Bell. But it was really Overton Lloyd was the one who, like, his style was just so like raw to me, like from that Flashlight album, the comic in the Flashlight album. And years later, when I was working at Klasky Chupo on Wild Thornberries and all that stuff, I was working on a project for Cedric the Entertainer. So we had to do like a character design of Cedric Entertainer. And they said, you know, somebody had already did the design. I just had to do the turnaround on the design. And I was wondering, like, who did the original design? And come to find out, it was Overton Lloyd.
Wow.
And then I got to call him up. We was talking on the phone and chopping it up. And he knew about BROTHERMAN. And I told him, I said, man, when I was like 12 years old or 13 years old, I saw the Funkadelic commercial. I used to just watch TV all day waiting for that commercial to come on again because it was an animated commercial. And then, and so we were talking. I told him how he was like my inspiration when I was a kid, and then we were talking about that project, the Cedric Entertainer project, and he said he was the one who did the character. And I said, yo, I did the turnaround on that, because it was like an intro that Cedric was using for like his animated, like an animated intro for his comedy shows.
Yeah. You
know, so me and Overton actually did the character design on it. So I said, man, that's cool. Okay, two down. And then and then the third one was Ernie Barnes from Good Times. You know, so all the black kids, we were all inspired by Ernie Barnes, you know, all in our face every week watching Good Times. And there was a young sister who sent me a paper that she wrote on BROTHERMAN, and Ernie Barnes was her teacher.
Wow.
And, yeah, so Ernie Barnes knew about BROTHERMAN, and before he passed away, he had sent me a note and put the note on, like, I guess she it was like a Post-it note that he put on her paper or something like that for me.
Oh, wow.
She sent it to me, and it was like an encouragement note for me to keep going, because he knew that he was an inspiration to me. And so, and then he passed away. So basically all three of the people that I say were big inspirations to me as a kid, I got a chance in one way or another to at least, connect with their spirits.
Well, that's great, because it's also scary. Like you said, you can meet somebody you admire, and then they're like not a nice person. Yeah. And that's really crushing when you meet people that are like that, because they've meant so much to you. It's hard to even sometimes feel quite the same way about their artwork after that.
Yeah, it's hard to separate the art from the artist sometimes if their attitudes don't match. Yeah.
And it's also funny too when you meet people, because sometimes people are really great people, but they're just not great socially. You know what I mean? There's that, there's that convention awkwardness sometimes.
Yeah. So Dawud, with that, do you feel like when you're at a show or at a signing or something that you have to be on, so to speak, when you're interacting with other people, just so to give them like an experience, or at least not to show that you're tired? Or how do you flip that stuff around when you're dealing with people?
Tired, like,
yeah.
To me, I'm like, this is what I do this for. You know what I mean? Like, there's no like conscious decision of, okay, I got to be this way for the fans. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, because somebody said, hey, does your hand get tired from signing all those books? And, as an artist, and especially like when you're doing graffiti and all that, you like writing, you want me to keep writing, tagging? I can do this all day long, so there's no, and then having conversation. Like, I like having conversation, like when people come up to talk. And I always understand, like, they they make this what it is. You know, I put it out to the world, but every little kid or a teenager or even adult elder that comes up to me, like all of their stories are valuable to me. So when they, and especially when they're standing in line patient, waiting for you, y'all know about that, like lines going out the door. And it's like, you want to give each person that attention, like when they come up, and I want to hear their stories. I want to know, what is it, they want to share something or whatever. I like to hear about it. So that to me, it's just natural conversation. I never really think of it as I got to get in character.
Right.
And even after the event is over, I'm still talking to people because that's just what I do.
Yeah.
I always kind of have to learn, okay, it's 6 o'clock, time to shut it down,
Right.
Sorry, all you guys back there, you got, we'll get to you next time. I'm like, nah, we got to get to everybody now. I'll go home and I'll stay an extra hour if I got to on my own clock.
Well, what?
It pays off. It pays off in the long run,
Yeah, and to think about like your attitude about it, not everybody shares that same attitude, and there, I'm sure you've met creators who have a totally different outlook on fan events or even having to sit at this table for 6 hours. It's almost like they're being put upon to do that.
They have handlers who are like, and cut the line.
Yeah. Right. And that reflects back on the creator. They're like, oh, I met this cat. He was a jerk, and his man told me I had to come back next week. And I was like, forget it. And they throw all his books in the garbage on the way out.
Yeah. And it reminds me, I saw Gene, I think it was in San Diego. I saw Gene Simmons and he was walking around. And, of course, people know who he is and they want him to sign something. And he's like, he has like a Sharpie and he's just like, he just takes it. He
just threw it at you.
He just dropped it.
That's the autograph.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be $50.
Yeah. I thought that was funny.
But yeah, and people like to throw around, especially in comics, about who's the nicest. Not like with hand styles, but just like, oh, I met that person. He's the nicest person in comics, or so and so. You got to catch him on the right day. But all of that stuff travels behind you, even if you know it or not. You know what I mean? And I think it's really cool. Like that, I've never heard a bad word about you. You know what I mean? Because so like all of that stuff, like you said, it's worth a currency at the end of your career. Like, oh, well, I always had a good experience. Yeah, I stayed online for 2 hours to meet him. I had a great time. This was awesome. I got all my book. You know what I mean? You hear those stories.
He dropped my Sharpie.
He threw a Sharpie at me and I caught it in my teeth. But there's also people avoid because they don't like, oh, I had to wait online and then he was like, that's another $50 because I got to go. So you're making me wait,
Yeah. I remember meeting Jack Kirby. Now, if there was a guy ever who could have been a pompous person, it would be a guy like that, right? Because he created everything. He's so well known. Super, like he was just like your grandpa, like the nicest guy. He posed for a picture for me. He signed stuff, and you could tell his wife had a little bit of that. She's got to watch him because he would probably just do that all day. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing.
I heard he would just invite people in his house into his, into his basement. They can watch him draw. He don't even know who they are, and he'll give them drawings. And his wife drawing out of their hand and say, because she was his protector. Because as an artist, I was watching the documentary on Mobius, and it's kind of interesting how Mobius and Jack Kirby, they had the women in their lives that were their protectors, and Mobius said that his wife was his protector because he said, as artists, we're like children in a playground. Our mind is our playground, and we don't want to do paperwork. We don't want to deal with this. We just want to create. And the fact that they had these partners in their lives that understood the value of their mind, of what they had in their mind to allow them to create. But what they would do is put the value, they will protect that value so that they can continue to create. Where sometimes, we'll just give a sketch away. Like, I'll make another sketch.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Who's with you, they see the value in that, be like, oh, no. That's going to cost you this, this, and this. You know what I mean? So, so it's one of, that's why I said for me for the longest time, I've been pretty easygoing with things, because not to say I wouldn't know my value. I think I always looked at, especially like young black kids and things like that, I always see like they're me, and when I was little, I didn't know anybody that did comic books. Like comic books, they could have been made on another planet, especially an animated TV show.
Yeah.
And so when kids come up, I want to try to share with them as, whatever they have, they want to know, I'll do a signature and do a little face. And I was never charging. I mean, for years I didn't. Even when people said, "Man, you should charge," it just didn't make sense to me. Like, charge just to do this, like,
right.
But I mean, but I get both sides of it, because at the same time, you also don't want people pimping you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Where they know your value and they know what they're getting, and you don't want to end up where you're great like Jack Kirby and you're going to your grave broke. You know what I mean?
Right. You're my favorite. eBay, where they want you to get that drawing.
They're cashing in on you. They're cashing in on you, and they're cashing in on your kindness.
Yeah,
and that's the thing that's jacked up about it. So you got to kind of find that happy medium.
Do you remember the first black artist that you met that gave you an idea as a kid? Like, that's a possibility for me.
You mean like a physical person outside?
Yeah, because I mean, I know from growing up in Detroit, or growing up in the black community, or teaching a lot of black kids in Philadelphia, that's not a real common thing in the black community to know another artist who was a visual artist. A lot of musicians and a lot of other creative, but a visual artist is very rare. To know somebody like.
When I, as a kid, I remember across the street, because I grew up in Mount Airy, right on Mount Airy Avenue. And right across the street from me was this other brother named Chris. And his uncle drew, like, he did some artwork that was in Ebony magazine. Like, I forgot what it was. It wasn't the Great Kings of Africa, but it was something that ran in Ebony magazine, and I remember him saying, "My uncle drew this," and I remember like my head like, "Wait, what? You know somebody who did something that was in a magazine?
Yeah,
Ebony magazine?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?" And I think I met him one time, and I probably didn't even say nothing to him. I probably just stared at him with my eyes. Didn't even know what to ask him. So I'll probably say that would probably be that's the oldest memory I could think of. But then when I got to high school, I went to Central High School, and my art teacher, Bernard Harmon, he was, it was a brother. He was like he was one of the city's top art teachers. And he eventually created the art program for the whole city of Philadelphia. Because he had created like an advanced art program in high school. Like my man Chuck Stone, he was in high school we were all in the back of art class together. He's the one that did directed Drumline and Black Sheep. You can get with this, you can get with that. 911 is a joke. He even did just recently what's that movie? Uncle Drew. He directed. Yeah, there was a lot of like great artists that were in the art room with us back then. And so I think the possibilities for me really came from just studying fine arts in high school. But when it came to specialized things like comics, animation, and stuff like that, we just figured that stuff out on our own, just getting Fantastic Films magazine. We used to make stop motion movies when we were like 12 and 13, me and my brother Jason. We built armatures. I should have pulled it out. It was in storage. But like doing like those Sinbad movies, we make like stop motion. All the kids in the neighborhood would come over. So basically, since we didn't have those people to be like, we were the people that we wanted to see, because the kids would come over our house to see, what y'all got next? We started with puppet shows. We had puppet shows, and we DJ, had we'll be DJing, making beats and all that stuff in the basement, and making movies, beaming people up, and putting bleach on the film, making people disappear. So really, even doing Brotherman, it wasn't really out of a love for comic books. It was really like a continuation of just something creative, something different. Let's make a comic book. You know what I mean? And I really approached it more like storyboard for film because we really wanted to do a movie. But, you know, back then you'd have to have a Bolex camera and all this other stuff, and it had to be a big budget, especially to create this type of universe we wanted. So, but a comic book, you know, the overhead is low, and we figured you get it into the hearts and minds of people. At that point, it's valuable. Then you can go to a movie later. But it wasn't really to just do comics. It was to create intellectual property.
Right. Yeah. I did a lot of that stuff as a teenager too. In fact, my old buddy who I used to do that stuff with is John Knoll, the guy who became the head of ILM. So, you know, but yeah, he was doing that, and he was building like a full-size replica of Battlestar Galactica, complete with, you know, LED lights. I mean, he would go out in the summers to visit John Dykstra, those guys out at ILM, because that's what he wanted to do. But yeah, I did a lot of that claymation. You know, you get your little Super 8 thing, and you're scratching the negative to make it like a ray beam come out of the gun and all that stuff. It's a lot easier now because you can do it all with the computer, so you're not having to get like, oh, I overexposed that, or I underexposed that, and you don't know. You know, you spend all that time doing something, and then it doesn't photograph right. You know.
Well, let me ask a little question about that. Like coming from your past and where we are as a culture of technology now, do you think if you and your brothers were kids now, you would have the same creative timeline, or would you have been distracted with NBA 2K or something like that? Because I think a big part of all of this is that we come from a generation where you just had to entertain yourself.
Yeah, we had focus.
Right.
Yeah, that's why it's really like a question like that would be a trick question, because it's almost like it's not even applicable. We can't even compare the two because like what I was saying, the focus was different.
Yeah. And
when we made movies, all the kids would come over because they didn't have. It's like you have not YouTube. It's like you have Photoshop, and none of the kids in the neighborhood have Photoshop. So they're all coming over your house to see, what'd you make? You know what I mean? But now everybody got Photoshop, so why they got to come over your house?
Right.
You know what I mean? They'll make it, and then they'll just upload it, and then you can see what they're doing. Same with DJing, because, you know, I was DJing since I was like 15 years old. And, you know, like back in the day, you know, you walk by, you know, you can just be walking down Germantown Avenue, and then you hear somebody scratching and cutting it up in the basement, and you just stand outside their door listening like, oh, they're killing it. You know what I mean? But you don't know who that person is. You just walking by. It's like, man, because back then, you know, there's a lot of dudes that had bass cabinets, and they was rocking, and it was something you never heard before. Like, yo, what record is that? And you may never hear it again because it was just an experience in that little tiny moment, and that's what made it special.
Right.
You know what I mean? But see, now it's like, oh yeah, you can get this. I could Shazam that, and now I'll go home and I got it at home. And then you can overplay it to the point where you're tired of hearing it. But now I have the memory of, what was that thing that dude was playing? I was like, that sounded sick. You know what I mean? So we don't have that. We don't really have that type of vibration now. The vibrations change. It doesn't mean anything's better or worse. It's just each time period creates and begets a certain type of flow and a certain type of mind state. I mean, go back to our parents' era where all they had was Tarzan.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they'll go into the theater, and their expressions of creativity was on a more limited thing. You know what I'm saying? So like I remember when my dad seeing me investing in 2 turntables, it was just like, why are you putting on, it's almost like why do you need 2 turntables? You know what I mean? You play a record with 1 turntable.
Isn't one good enough?
I ain't buy 2 records. They're the same record. Think about that. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
This
There
was
was-
happening.
yeah.
This was
Yeah.
happening.
And there was also, I think, a lot of accidental discovery in that way of doing things. Like, in order for you to have the source material, you'd have to go to the record store and go through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. See?
And then you would find stuff that you would have never known about any other way.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And you can do that now, except the algorithm is not as accidental as it used to be. You know? So at what age would you say that you were like 14, 15, 16 when you're in our class, when you're thinking like, this is something, you know, and were you reading comics at that time? Were you looking at animation? What was your visual inspiration at that time, besides Mad and Mort Drucker and Jack Davis?
Oh. I mean, and like I said, with Mad, it wasn't like that was the drive. That was just kind of something that was in the house. I picked it up, look at it, do the fold the thing in the back to see the picture, you know. But you know, I had like my collection of comics when I was younger. A friend of mine moved in across the street from me, and like from 3rd grade up, and I just remember being like this, like, I mean, I was crazy like for Marvel. Like, I was a mad Marvel fan from like 3rd grade all the way up to like 6th or 7th grade. And then I had a talk with my dad. Like, my dad was an activist, like community activist. He wrote books on the Black family, celebration rituals, rites of passage books. You know, our basement was like a Black history library. But he also supported our dreams and our ventures. You know, it was like, whatever y'all want to do, I'll help you get there. You know, him and my mom. My mom was a Philadelphia public school teacher, but they always like would have us into critical thinking, like looking at what is it that you're looking at, and where are you in this? You know what I mean? So as a little kid, you know, Marvel had my mind like this, and I was also in FOOM, Friends of Old Marvel. So,
oh wow, okay, wow.
Incredible Hulk button and Captain America shirt in the mail. Yeah, I was all in, man. And and then I remember my dad wanted to have a conversation with me about the comic books that I had. And I was saving up. I was not eating lunch. I heard Jazzy Jeff had the similar story too. He said he didn't eat lunch so he could save his lunch money to go buy records. I did the same thing. I would save my lunch money and go buy comic books at Montgomeryville Mart when my parents would go there, because they used to have a bookstore out there where they would sell, you know, the covers ripped off, and I could buy comics for $1. And so I got up to like 1,000 comics. And so when we had the conversation, my dad was breaking down, like, you know, how many of these books have Black characters in them. And then we went into the books with Black characters in them. Like, now let's look at how they're represented. And then I went, you know, basically summing up, they were either sidekicks or they weren't really like truly the hero or respected like a hero on an equal plane to like a Captain America or all these other characters. And my dad said, and he pointed out other stuff that I didn't even recognize that was in the books, like, you know, political things, because he was into that, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, they stood up to Mayor Rizzo and all during that time. So I was just like, Dad, you know, man, my rush for Marvel just kind of.
Thanks, Dad.
To me, it was like, yo, man, it's like, I'm starving myself, and this is what they think of me. That's how that's how I felt. And my mom and dad had the fireplace going one night, and I came down, and my dad said, hey, what are you doing? And I said, I don't want these anymore, you know. And he said, well, I ain't say you got to do that. I said, that's cool. I don't even want them anymore. And I threw them all in the fire. And when I threw them in the fireplace, I no longer had that, I got to have my comic books. But I still liked them. You know, like I still, you know, once it's in your heart, you still know the stories. Like how to draw comics the Marvel way, even though there were little nuances that my mom pointed out in there, because it said, do draw lips thin, do not draw lips thick, do not draw nose thin and pleasing, not wide nostrils. And my mom said, they're telling you not to draw your own mother. You know, I was like, say what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm a little kid. I'm a little radical, you know. Retrospect, if I'd have kept those books, I could have cashed it in and got all my lunch money back. But, you know, I didn't know. You know, you're living in the moment. You're not thinking like 30 years ahead. But it was significant because I think what that did, it helped me to not have so much of an allegiance to it, but I started to really look more within. Like, okay, I learned a lot from Marvel in terms of like they were the best in terms of like storytelling, character development. Like, you know, I wasn't into DC. I just thought Marvel was so dope. I still do. And I learned a lot about how to draw comics from how to draw comics the Marvel way. But when I was in high school and when I, like I said, DJing and stuff, because right after I did the thing with the comics, my oldest brother came back from Howard University and gave me Grandmaster Flash Super Rapping. And that's when like hip hop was just breaking in. Yeah. And he said, play this. And I said, well, what's this? He said, it's called rap. And I was like, rap? What's rap? Oh, let's see how far this is going to go.
Right. This will never last.
Like, I'll give it 2 weeks. So I put it on, and it blew my mind. I was like, man, these dudes are rap. They're talking on top of a beat for like 12 minutes. You know what I'm saying? There was no like, you know, no singing and stuff like that. They was just going in, and they sound like superheroes. Their names sound like superheroes. So my mind was coming straight out of Marvel into this. Right. So I was like, oh, this is so dope. This is so dope. And I remember going by the playground, Cedric Playground, and dudes were cutting up Treacherous 3, Block Party. I mean, they were Treacherous 3, Treacherous 3 records, and it was a block party. And then more block parties started happening, and more DJing and cutting up and stuff like that. And Jazzy Jeff came around, all that. And it's just like, yo, this is dope. So I would take the incidents that used to happen at block parties and I would draw it in a cartoon when I was in high school and copy those things for my friends. And that's really, and nobody was really doing it like that then. So BROTHERMAN was kind of like evolved from that energy for years. It wasn't really trying to be like Marvel or DC, whatever. It was just taking us what we did. Right. And now we're the stars. We're the, you know, you take something like a block party, but give a dynamic perspective, give it that urban flow. But then I also like theatrics. So I was always like, I didn't like stuff to be basic. Like to me, like even with hip hop, it's like, it's cool. But to me, I always saw hip hop as something bigger than what it actually is in our reality. To me, I always felt like this is like spiritual resurrection. This is like coming from ethereal world, the abstract arrows and the graffiti, when you take the words off of most hip hop tracks, the instrumentals take you to another dimension. Because a lot of times there's songs that are looped and sampled from people who are dead and gone. So in my mind, it was like we're resurrecting ancestral energy. That's called sasa, the here and now. Like you're bringing people, you're bringing these spirits into the here and now. So that's how I saw it. Like hip hop to me was like bigger than what we see, but we're utilizing it on a low vibration when it's actually could be on a high vibration that could take us to another universe. So to me, BROTHERMAN, Big City was that universe. It was that place that I saw that that hip hop takes me to. But yeah, there you go. But
so it's like it's almost like you're saying it's like a mythology,
right?
Just like Marvel or DC had their mythology.
They had their mythology.
This is your mythology, but a mythology that you can relate to because it's also cultural,
right? And you know, we create our own subway map. We have our own currency. It's basically like I call it dream state mythology, meaning like when you go to sleep at night, your family is in your dreams. Your friends are in your dreams. Your cousins are in your dreams. You're on the subway, but it's not the Broad Street line, but it feels like it. Yeah. But it also feels like the PATH train in Jersey. You can call my family's from Jersey City, even though me and my brothers grew up in Philly. So New York and Jersey City was like our second home. So there's kind of like a merge between, wait, how these people in my dream and they're dead and gone, and these people never met these people, but they're all in this same place. So when I draw Brother Man, I rarely use reference because I want it to feel like a different place. I don't want it to be any place you've seen before, but at the same time, it feels like where you've been before. So that's why I call it dream state mythology. And my brother Guy writes that way. Like he and I, it's like an unspoken understanding because there's the convergence of classic soul. Because, we grew up Sound of Philadelphia, WDAS, classic soul. When I was a kid drawing, I listened to love music as 12 and 13 years old. This Must Be Heaven and all that stuff. I ain't have no girlfriend, nothing like that. But magic and all that stuff, the melodic, it soothed you. It like when you draw, you just feel peaceful and you draw. And it wasn't until later on where you understand, like, oh, they're really talking about this. I didn't really think about what they're talking about. I just like the melody. Right. You know what I mean? So just like when you were saying, like, if you were a kid now with the technology now, would you be the same person? Probably not, because even when it comes down to, like, when we talk about the music, there's not a lot of love music now. There's not a lot of music that speaks to the soul and speaks to the heart. Back then, Motown, Sound of Philadelphia, every city, like, regardless if it was coming out of Texas or LA or whatever, Ohio players, we didn't look at that as our parents' music. Stevie Wonder and Al Green was all the family's music. Like, everybody was jamming to it. Now there's so much of a separation where if you just say Rakim, kids be, that's old. He fell off, they played out. And I was like, why is that old and played out? Like,
it's funny you say that. Yeah. I never thought that as a kid because, growing up in Detroit, we heard Motown. I heard stuff my parents heard, and it wasn't like such a separation, like, oh, I'm a kid, I can only like this. My parents can only like that. My grandparents can only like that. But I think that definitely, like, even with social media, like, kids are like, oh no, I can't be on Facebook. I have to be on TikTok or whatever the other thing.
With my parents, that's
because
my
I can't.
Yeah,
my parents are going to see me doing something and going, "What are you doing?"
Nothing.
Nothing. I didn't say anything.
Nothing.
I'm not being radical. No. So it sounds like music was as important as art in a way, which is also, I think, a little different because most artists I meet, music is, I would say it's important to me, but not necessarily in the way that it seemed like it was important to you, and sort of like figuring all these things or piecing. It's a thing that sort of helped piece these things together.
And it's interesting we're talking about this because and Dawud says this a lot better than I think I have in a long time, but I try to explain how hip hop is so important to us on so many different, like, wavelengths that a lot of people don't understand. But are just like, well, I don't get it. Why you guys just writing on the side of a building? You don't own that. And it's like, if you have to kind of stop and explain it, you've already missed the point and it's not worth talking about it. But like, the music part, the art influence, it's all about the vibe and the energy of the stuff. And again, that's why, like, Brother Man and all these things have connected so strongly with so many people, is because, like, it's just like a grand culmination of all these things, and you gave it a voice at the same time.
It's funny because there was last year there was this kid, a white kid at the academy, who's really into tagging, and he's this young guy, probably late 20s, and he's really into that whole culture, but from like a different trajectory than you guys, but he's relating to that aspect of it, and you see that now, how it's like it's just beyond urban culture, because now you have, like, white kids are growing up in Florida, which have nothing to do with somebody growing up in Philly or Detroit or Chicago, but they somehow find there's a connection to some way that they want to express something that they feel. So I don't know if you notice that yourself.
Yeah, I knew that from the jump, because to me it's like, I always said, when we grew up, I mean, when you look at Wu-Tang and all that stuff, that was us too. We grew up watching all the martial arts, going to the Milgram and the Fox Theater downtown to see Enter the Dragon, and with the Bandbox and the Esquire theater, dollar theaters, and Five Fingers of Death and all that. And those films, we didn't star in it. We weren't even in those films being represented as Black people, but we identified with the stories. Like, we liked the stories. It was just well done. It was done to the point where like Bruce Lee, he had the attributes of a hero. So he was heroic. And that's all we needed to know. We wanted to be like him, we weren't trying to be Chinese. We wanted to be like, we wanted to fight like him. We wanted to be strong like him. We wanted to do like him. Mm-hmm. And the reason why people enjoyed the Asian culture is because they thrusted the culture out in a way where they were proud of themselves. And when you're proud of yourself, it's not about, well, you don't got to put me in there. I don't care. You don't have to put me in it. I mean, it was cool when you see Jim Kelly in there and all that. It was oh man, we being rap. But even if we weren't, it didn't matter because it was about just telling good stories. And I think, just when you look at Bollywood films, mm-hmm. or films, from South America or things like that, every culture should be free. It's supposed to be free to project their seed, project from the core. That's called the asili, the seed. And they're supposed to project how we eat, how we dance, how we pray, how we fight, blah, blah, blah. And then when they put it out into the world, we receive it. The rest of the world receives it. And then we take that in and we're inspired. We're not supposed to be absorbed to the point where we forget who we are. And then next thing you know, we're just trying to be like them. We're supposed to be inspired to say, hey, anime, cool. I like anime, but my everyday should not be like, I'm trying to be anime. Like, if you want to, cool. I'm saying with me, I'm inspired by it, the details, this, that, and other thing, but I still have stories to tell. My grandfather, my grandmother, that's what I call drawing from the soul. It's mm-hmm. like you're taking your stories and projecting your stories the same way they do. You know what I mean? Nobody has a problem with an all Asian film, an all Indian film, an all Spanish film. But when African Americans do something it's something that represents, like, because with BROTHERMAN, we had to create our own world because there is no Africa America. But there is an African American culture that is distinct, but it doesn't have a land. It doesn't have a landmass. Mm-hmm. So Big City was like that landmass that has our attributes there. Has nothing to do with, because actually, it's not like the white man is the enemy, because in BROTHERMAN, we're the alpha and the omega. We're the highest power and the lowest power. So it's us dealing with us and dealing with our issues and our problems, but it's for everybody because our fans we were shipping books to Japan since 1992. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's an anime in Japan called Tokyo Tribe by this guy named Santa Inui, and he goes by the name Santastic. And he contacted me in the late 90s and said he was inspired by BROTHERMAN. And it's a whole anime series. And it's all urban. It's like urban. And you usually don't see that in anime. No. It's like a whole urban landscape. B-boys, hip-hop, and all that stuff. But it's their interpretation of how they see it. You know what I'm saying? That's big in Japan. But to know that your work inspired them over there, and it's cool because then the boomerang effect, it comes back to you. Dude hits me up, and I'm like, yo, that's cool. Now I can watch Tokyo Tribe. You know what I'm saying? And I respect that. So he respected my thing. I respected his thing. You know what I'm saying? That's how culturally how we're supposed to get along. You're not supposed to get mad because you don't see yourself in something else. Right. Then I'll make my thing, and then you buy my thing.
Yeah, because and I think that's happening a lot now. Yeah, I think that's happening a lot. Like there was that motherfuckers movie, which was the French and the Jap. That's awesome. You can see like it's like hip hop and like gangbangers from like L.A. meets Mobius and Akira. I mean, like
and those angles in it, the angles and the big going around the camera, like that's the type of stuff I like. It's the aesthetic that makes it even greater. Like that's why I was saying I feel like hip hop for the longest time has always been like lower vibration or simple. Like, you know how, okay, somebody gets shot on the street, somebody sells drugs, somebody's pimping. We all know that. I mean, that's in the news. We see it all the time. And then when they put it on film, it's like, all right, at a certain point, we've already seen that. Where's the next level of creativity to this?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So the next level of creativity is when you take something and you shape it in a way where it's actually more healing. It's showing people a way to rise above this, to create a whole. What's the next 300 years from now? What is this community going to be like? Is it still going to be the same like this, or is it going to rise to a whole nother level? So if it's going to rise to a whole nother level, that means something has to happen in order for it to rise in that level, and that comes from our mind and the way we think. Which means we can't just keep showing the same thing that has the same outcome to the public, because as artists, we shape the way people think. We offer food to people. So, you know, when Guy writes, Guy's always putting in phrases and things that people come back to us and say, man, you opened up my mind with that. Brother Man got me out of gangs. Brother Man got me off of drugs. I got people say I became a lawyer because Antonio Valor was a lawyer. You know, and these are people who said they don't read comic books. They said, I don't read comic books. I read Brother Man. I don't know how many times I've heard that.
That should be the catchphrase.
But I'm saying, like, that was the intent when we made it. When we made it, we said, this is what's going to happen. And everything that we said was going to happen, happened. And that's not out of ego. It's just as creators, all y'all know, when you sit down to draw, you don't just draw to draw. You say, this is the impact I want to get. Even if you're drawing big booty girls and stuff like that, watch a lot of dudes buy this book. And then when a lot of dudes are buying your book, hey, did you know all these dudes buying your book? Yeah. That's why I drew big booty girls.
Dawud, I have a question for you.
They'll still be there in the future, I guarantee you. 3,000 years from now, they'll still be big booty girls, no matter what.
I hope so. I really hope so.
All right, Dawud, I have a question from Amani Latif. Amani's a great friend of the podcast, also a tremendous cartoonist in his own right. He's the mind behind Peep Game Comics, a digital comics subscription service. He asked, Dawud, I feel like your style has been mimicked by several younger artists in comics and publishing companies. What's your feelings on this? And he has a two-part question. I'll just read it to you. Have you ever been approached by major publishers as a feature artist or cover artist? But maybe you can talk to the first part of the question. Okay, for the first part, I know the style. I know my style when I see it. I know that a lot, not only like comic artists, I've seen my work in movies, major feature films. And this is not just from me guessing. I mean, I've met a lot of people who were directors and stuff like that who said they were inspired by Brother Man. And we even had deals with major motion pictures, including Columbia Television. And a year later, Blank Man came out on Columbia Pictures. And that's a whole nother story within itself. You know, like Martin Lawrence. I mean, when me and my brother were in a closed interview on CBS News, Martin Lawrence was the only one in the audience because he was about to launch the Martin Show. And then he had that character, Bruh Man, which has nothing to do with our character. But to me, I wouldn't be surprised because I tell people, yo, I met these people. You know, these people were reading Brother Man because by that time that came out, we were already at 500,000 books by the time the Martin Show hit independently. And during that time, like we were saying, that was a time of focus when people were focusing on. There was no Black comic book movement. It was burgeoning. It was just starting. So to me, when I see people mimicking the style, to me, it's just a feeling of
I don't get angry. If anything, I think it's cool because it's like it shows that you're making an impact, that people are inspired by what you do. And there's some people they'll mimic the style, and I feel like, man, it got me like wanting to go back and draw because they may have more clarity and style to it, because my style was more rough and rugged. I didn't have all that training.
Yeah.
You know, and as a little kid, I didn't have all this inspiration. They're coming up in an era where they can see all these dope artists at 8 years old. They can have a master teacher do a tutorial at 10 years old. So their stuff looks professional by the time they're 15. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, it's like, oh, and they're still inspired by Brother Man, like that they're mimicking this and that. So to me, it's cool. I don't have a problem with it. And I see so much stuff. And a lot of people come up to me and say, yo, you're the one that started the whole urban underground scene. Like there's things that I know, but I don't necessarily say it because I see it, I know it. But it's like, all right, that's cool, you know, because I have my mission in terms of what I'm trying to do. But there's other people that come up and say, nah, Dawud, you deserve the crown. You did this, you did that. You know, your brother Guy, what he did with his writing is under what do you call it?
Underappreciated.
Yeah. As a writer, like you know, people would they still don't write. Like even Lauryn Hill. When I sat down with Lauryn Hill, she was a Brother Man fan before she even had her Lauryn Hill career, and she told me that one-on-one back in '97 when she was winning her Grammy Awards and about to drop Zion. She was sitting right across me and wanted to do like a Brother Man movie. So she knew Brother Man material. She knew the characters, the stories, and she studied comic books and said, people are copying what y'all are doing, but they can't copy the soul of what Brother Man is. And she said, whatever you do, even if I can't help you, get it done and make sure you bring this out, because it's still like nothing anybody's done before. So to me, I've always understood like people can mimic, but you know, I draw from the soul. You don't know my history. You don't, you know, stuff can be, their drawings could be dope. It could be this, could be that, but it's still not me. Because even when I used to airbrush at the mall in Philly, you could set up right next to me and airbrush right next to me. I'll still get my customers. You can even be quote unquote better than me, technically, but you don't think like me. And I don't think like you. So you'll always have your customers. So I've never been that person to feel insecure about what I'm doing. I never say I'm the best artist or whatever, you know what I'm saying? So that's for that one. And have I ever been approached by major publishers? Well, I've done quite a few books with Kwame Alexander for Huffington Mifflin. I just finished one that's coming out soon. I also did this one right here, Becoming Muhammad Ali.
Hold that up. Let me give you the screen. I was just going to talk about that a second ago.
Yeah, this is James Patterson Books. You know, James Patterson is #1 selling book author in the world. Yeah. And this is endorsed by the Ali estate. And Kwame Alexander and James Patterson teamed up on this. And Huffington Mifflin is backing this book along with, like I said, the Ali estate. And also I did Monster. I don't have it in front of me.
No, you don't have it.
Myers Monster, the graphic novel version. And you know, and then I did like a lot of film productions, like Diary of a Wimpy Kid. I did storyboards on the Long Haul movie, Goosebumps 2. The Quad on BET, 24 Legacy. A bunch of TV shows and stuff like that, especially here in Atlanta, because all the movies are being done here. So I just get storyboard job after storyboard job. And those are jobs that come in and out the door. I knock them out. They pay well. Right. And then next you know, you're building up your portfolio. But a lot of people don't know that you did it. Right. But my name's in the credits when the movies go off. But, you know, people, you don't.
How did you, I think that would be an interesting thing also for the viewers to go, like, how do you go from the independent comic to doing non-independent commercial things like, worked in animation, doing designs, backgrounds, character designs. I mean, that's, because you really have to have chops, and you have to be able to produce besides just having chops, because a lot of people have chops, but I mean, you've got to hit. That's different than satisfying yourself on your own individual project. You have to work with other people as part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk to that about how you went and like the training to go to do storyboards? Because storyboards, I think of all the jobs I've ever done, storyboards are the hardest because they require the most thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, storyboards is basically directing.
Yeah,
you're directing, and because all those jobs, I'm always sitting down with the director of the films and the film projects. Even the Bobby Brown story, I forgot about that one that came on recently. I sat down with the director on that one. But I mean, it was kind of like a journey. Like I said, I went from airbrushing T-shirts in the 80s at the Gallery Mall throughout the 80s. That led to BROTHERMAN Comics from 90 to 96. And that only stopped because my parents passed away like back to back. So that impacted since it was a family business, it in fact impacted the infrastructure of the business. BROTHERMAN never fell off. We just stopped making it. So it stopped at number 11 in mid-story. You see what I'm saying? And then it just so happened I had a friend in New York who was an art director at an animation studio in Manhattan. And he said, hey, man, I got a job position for you as a character designer on the Pink Panther game. And that was like divine intervention, because before that I was living in Germantown. I had a second son on the way, living in my ex-wife mom house, chewing Shelton. And,
you rode away.
It's kind of wild around there. And I didn't know what was going to come next. I was like, man, I don't know what's going to happen. And when my man called me up, man, I took the family up to Jersey. I mean, I was right across the river. I was working in New York. And that was my first time having any type of studio experience. I mean, I was nervous because I never worked in the studio environment.
Right.
But I was working with animators every day. Everybody was like real cool. I learned a lot about character design, storyboarding, and background design. And then that company closed down. Then I was at MTV Animation on the Daria show. And then I did my first music storyboard. Big Pun, I'm Not a Player. Yeah. I'm not a player, I just crush a lot. That was my first music video. So that's all when I was in New York. And then another friend of mine was in LA. He said, man, you should come out here, man. It's land of milk and honey. And I was like, hey, I wonder what we like to work in LA. So the two people I work with in New York, the woman who wrote the script for the Pink Panther game, she had went to Klasky Csupo and had written, remember the show As Told by Ginger? It was on Klasky Csupo.
Yeah.
She was the creator of that show. And that was out during the time Rocket Power and all that was out.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went out there, she told me who I should contact, but I still had to put in a lot of work and whatnot. So then I got experience. Because I just packed up the family and went to LA. I took a chance. I mean, I almost ended up homeless. I had the whole family, ran out of money, and at the last minute, I got 2 job offers from Sony Animation and Klasky Csupo. And Sony Animation was like Godzilla show and Men in Black. And I said I wanted to work on that, but then Klasky Csupo and Thornberrys. And I didn't know what Thornberrys was. It was #1 show on Nickelodeon, but I didn't have cable. I didn't know what it was. Mm-hmm. But I just knew they were offering more money. I said, I'll take it. So I went with them. That didn't take much to process. So then after that, I ended up going to I was on that show basically during the high point, Wild Thornberrys.
Yeah.
And then came to Atlanta, ended up at Cartoon Network. And so in all these years, I'm meeting so many animators and production artists that it's commonplace. I know 3D animators, like top-notch 3D animators doing stuff for Ben 10. I mean, these are all like my friends and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So then if you want to do storyboards for film, hey man, do you know who's doing this? Hey, doing this, or I might know something and I pass it on to my boy Brian, and then Brian, he'll pass it on to me,
Right.
you know, and it just kind of becomes like your life now. So Brother Man is not really like here in my life. It's kind of more down here in hiatus while I'm learning all this stuff up here.
Right.
You know, and the irony is that I'll go to studios not thinking about Brother Man, and the artists that I run into who I'm admiring, they say, yo, man, I'm here because of Brother Man. Yo, what you doing here? You know what I mean? So it's like Brother Man is still making an impact as I'm trying to learn something else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened in LA. It happened when I was in the Bronx. It happened when I was in Atlanta. And I said, wow, man, that boomerang effect is still deep. It's still running deep out there.
Well,
it's your fault I'm here. It's your fault.
Well, you know what, that's interesting. Even going back to Amani's question, it seems like you kind of entered this whole nother realm of creative and doing like high-end creative projects and bypassed the comic book world. Like, you know, it sounds like it seems like there was never really a minute where like Marvel was checking for you. Like, yo, I keep hearing about this Brother Man thing. Maybe we can bring this guy in. It seemed like that didn't seem to happen, or you weren't looking for that either.
No, I wasn't. No, I was never looking for that. I think. I mean, I've been approached by Dark Horse, but it wasn't at that time. It wasn't me. It was like when we had Big City Comics. Like this is like '92.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of stuff was happening with Brother Man. See, what some people don't realize, Brother Man was really only from 1990 to 1995.
Right.
Really like 94, because my mom died in 94 when number 10 came out. And then number 11 sat in a box for a year. And then my dad died and it stopped. And we did 750,000 books really from the time that it started, and you're building it and growing it, and then it stopped. And then from there, I'm doing like studio stuff for the next 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
So when people are talking Brother Man all those years and they say, hey, you selling subscriptions to Brother Man? I was like, Brother Man was like 14, 15 years ago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I haven't done anything with Brother Man since then. It's made that much of an impact that people talk about it as if it's still in print. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until we put this book out in 2016, the graphic novel.
Yeah, let me give you the screen for that. That's the kind of like the culmination of the last story arc, right?
Right. And this one, you know, because Brian McGee,
he's amazing colorist.
Yeah, and Brian's more than a colorist, because Brian and he's one of those artists that I said I met while at Turner. He was working at Cartoon Network.
Mm-hmm.
And I admired him. I didn't know he knew anything about Brother Man, and he and I used to have lunch together. And he said, hey man, I want to help you bring Brother Man back. He said, I heard you were in Atlanta, and I knew one day we would meet and I would help you bring it back.
I love it.
Yeah, we would have lunch together all the time, and you know, he produces music and I do music. So then we got together, did the Brother Man theme song track and all that stuff. And because Brian used to be at Disney. He used to work at Disney. He used to be at he used to work with Hype Williams. Like when I did the Big Pun video, Brian was in New York working with Hype Williams on Hype Williams videos. But we didn't know each other back then.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy, because we were talking. Because he and I always talk about divine intervention. Like, this is bigger than us. Mm-hmm. And you know, when he got on board, it wasn't really. He just said he believed in what this represented, and he understood the ethereal concept that this is coming from another. It's like we're conduits for our ancestors, and the comic book is just a medium of resurrection, to resurrect our ancestral spirit, to change the way people see us. We have to resurrect a new way to be perceived in mass media. Because mass media can destroy and it can build. So Big City Comics and now Big City Entertainment, it was not, remember I was saying like how hip hop, I feel like it's on this certain vibration when it should be on a vibration like this.
Yeah.
Mass media suppresses it to this vibration. Mm-hmm. But Big City Entertainment, the concept of it is that it's not Big City on this level. oh, it's the hood, it's this, yeah, man, it's a job, you know what I'm saying? It's good times. It's like, no, that's not what it is.
Right.
It's big city, meaning like we think big. Because when you think about African traditions, when you think about African American habits, how we take little thing, or we take the scraps of something and turn it into something that everybody wants around the world. You go to Africa and you see how they'll make gali motos, and they'll take old computers and build robots out of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's the tradition. That's in our DNA. That's in the melanin stream. Mm-hmm. So to me, big city is is thinking. That's why we call it on the police cars, it says think big city, because what we're saying is to think big, because that's how we work. That's what hip hop is. Hip hop is thinking out the box. Mm-hmm. You got to think big. You can't think regular. You got to take that, flip it upside down, twist it, do this, do that, and then put it out in the world. And then somebody else going to look at it and say, well, I can take that and do this, and boom, throw it back at you. And then it just keeps
building,
growing. And to me, that's big city. It's just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's all metaphoric of this universe.
Yeah.
So you have the great minds that use it for good, and you have the great minds that use it for evil, but they're all great. So that's why in big city, we didn't want to make our villains like, they're not like evil.
Yeah,
they're not evil people that you discard. They're people like, we want to go into their history, and you realize they went this way because they weren't getting love at home, or they didn't know anybody to show them better, but they still had a great mind. It's like Malcolm X. What if Malcolm X never came across the teachings of Elijah Muhammad? He'd have just been another brother in jail.
Right. So
how many brothers in jail have these great minds that could probably build rocket ships, but they never get that opportunity to do so? So are they truly the villain? But if we create an environment where it's just like if you're going to grow plants and you're not watering the garden, you're not removing the weeds, but you got all these seeds out there, and then the seeds, they're just,
they can't germinate. Yeah,
they don't germinate. So to me, big city is like, this is us creating a foundation, a place where it can grow. And all these characters, it's like, we call it consciousness versus apathy. Mm-hmm. And Antonio Valor is just one character who's trying to help us come back to our original greatness. Because we even have the founders of big city, and they're on the money because they were the ones who discovered the place back when they understood, like, we found all this land. We're going to farm this land. We're going to create this great place. And it was called Cameroon. But it was discovered by this brother named Lindsay and Big. And Lindsay and Big, that whole origin about the people on the money is in the back.
Oh, yeah, you got, and we talk about world building a lot, where people think of it more like, oh, well, I guess you got to make funky looking cars, but like your world building of big city and that whole universe is so rich, it's almost like people might start blinking like, yo, you thought of everything. Like the big city map I was just showing has street addresses on it. Mm-hmm. And, I think to maybe someone to see something like that is like, wow, that's a lot. Or maybe, wow, that's more than I thought that I would get out of a comic book. But it just shows the energy and the thought that you're putting into the work. And I think it's not extra, but it's like more than people would give the energy to if they did that themselves.
Well, that's why I try to tell people BROTHERMAN was not about a guy in a suit.
Yeah.
We said that from the very beginning. Yeah, that's Big City Comics World Headquarters. That was our home base that we had on Washington Lane in the Mount Airy section. Mm-hmm. And so when we opened that shop up, we had a storefront. We were teaching art classes in the back. So we had like little kids in the neighborhood would come in, and we would teach them how to draw. We had a silk screening processing thing. We were running shirts in the basement, and it was like a hub. I mean, people were coming from all over the city.
Right. I mean, yeah. Everybody knew about your store. Yeah. So yeah. I wanted to ask you real quick, Dawud, about that, like going backwards a little bit. So coming from the background of like just trying to figure this all out, but then we talk a lot about giving back to the community and to the kids who didn't grow up having that kind of mentorship. So tell me about when you guys opened this store, and who had the idea to like, yo, let's open a store and a teaching center. How did that happen?
Well, the store was really it was a continuation of, like, when I said having the working at the gallery, going back to the 80s. Mm-hmm. And then Big City Comics, the original Big City Comics in East Orange, New Jersey, was a store. It was a store just like that. It was smaller, and it was more like a hole in the wall joint. And it was in, and it's funny because Tretch is from East Orange, New Jersey. Yeah. And they're always talking about North 118th Street. Yeah. We were like one block down from there. So that neighborhood, it was like, talk about it's in the hood. It was like right there where the kids that used to come in there, they used to say, y'all should be in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. Because that's how they saw the store. Mm-hmm. So to me, it was like, I wanted to have a whole chain of stores and have them in these areas so it creates opportunity. It's almost like having Disney stores, but they're in these areas where kids are not exposed to it, but they can learn, like, how we're talking about taking hip hop off the low vibration and put it into the high vibration.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like you're pulling all the talent that's in the streets. And once you fuel all these kids with higher vibration, you're creating a whole new paradigm. Because now it's not like it's just one or two Malcolm X type kids or Angela Davis types walking around. You have a whole community of them. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, I totally get it. Mm-hmm.
Right, and the arts is feeding that. So the Big City Comics World Headquarters, and even calling it the World Headquarters, is because when I was teaching art to the kids, I would emphasize. I said, "Do y'all know why it's called World Headquarters?" I said, because anywhere on the planet where they drop you, anywhere on the planet, this is the headquarters. This is, it's like, even though I wasn't traveling the world like that, I was trying to put the kids in the mind state of the world.
Right.
Not Washington Lane, not Germantown, Mount Airy. Mm-hmm. Think of the world. And whenever people think about where's Big City Comics World Headquarters, it's right up the street from me. Mm-hmm. So strategically on the planet, everybody, because to me it was like BROTHERMAN was the Mickey Mouse to Disneyland, and it's beginning right here. Mm-hmm. And then the kids, it's like you can see their eyes lighting up and that pride of, oh, this is not just a corner store. This is the hub to the world.
Right.
Anybody in the world, like BROTHERMAN Comics is made here, but I also take art classes here. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I want to continue that. You see what I'm saying? So it's not the storefront. The storefront is not the idea. The idea is eternal. It could be any building, any storefront. It's just it is in that form at that time.
And one of the big things that I love about you and your family is that there's no selfishness in all of these acts that you've brought into the world, right? If you're selfish, you don't open up a store front in the middle of the neighborhood to teach kids how to draw or even to empower them is really what we're talking about, is empowering the community. And who thought that comic books could even lead to conversations like that? So there's so many facets to this. I find it
so I think comics are such a magnet to, and they're so accessible. I mean, one of the things about teaching that high school class is that I would see is I've been teaching it for like 10 years. Mm-hmm. You see different generations of kids come in, and even though 20 years ago those kids were into Teenage Ninja Mutant Turtles or Powerpuff Girls or whatever, there's still a commonality with kids are just drawn to wanting to draw those stories, tell their stories. And comics is such, now it's super anime because that's really what they've been seeing for their entire lives. Mm-hmm. If you're 5 years old now and you got the internet, you got your phone, we're looking at, what you see, that's what forms your world. Like we were saying earlier, like what formed our world was the pre-internet whatever you found by accident. You know, somebody was throwing something out, and you walk down the street and go like, "Oh, what's that box? Oh, look at that!" You know, that kind of a thing. And I would say, I don't know if you see this, but there's a lot more women now interested in telling stories and drawing and using comics than there ever was when I was 15. There were no girls. The only boobs you saw were on dudes.
Sadly enough.
But now I would say that out of my class, majority is female, and more of them want to tell comic book stories than guys do. I don't know if you see that.
No, I do. Yeah, because that's how it was when I was younger. Like, especially like because I liked comics, I liked sci-fi, I liked stop motion and things like that. That wasn't popular, especially for a young black man or a young black boy. It was like, oh man, he corny. Oh, that's that dude that be liking them spaceships and stuff. You know what I'm saying? But now it's like, the girls be like, yo, the new Iron Man out. I gotta see the new Avengers or whatever. I'm just like, where were they when I was little? You know what I'm saying? Like, how can they sit down on the corner and read comic books with me? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of that. I think a lot of what's changed that is technology, because technology has made things like epic. It's made things like over the top. They added a sex appeal to it. You know what I'm saying? And so now more people are attracted to it. And then you have a generation of kids, they grew up in that. So now they're like young girls, young women, and they're pursuing like going to SCAD and things like that. When I was at art school, I saw I think one black girl was in my class. You see what I'm saying? And and I was like the only black dude. You see,
and everybody else was like a point at your.
Oh, I'll be over to help you later. Assemble your skeletons for some of your animation.
Well, hold on. Crown's in the chat room, and she wants to give a shout out to Jackie Orms, and that there's always been women in the industry. Which I totally agree with. But I think we were kind of just remarking more on the kind of like the cultural buildup of when this stuff wasn't popular in the way it is now. And that's not a saying that women weren't in the industry.
Yeah. Right. I mean, like I dated a girl very briefly in the late 70s, early 80s. She had friends in Japan who sent the stuff to America that then they dubbed and made early stuff. So there were people who were in it, but it was like if you went to a comic book convention and you were standing in line with your portfolio, you never saw a girl standing in front of you.
Well, I mean, even beyond that, it's like when I talk about black men, like I said, when I'm talking about my experience, I was like the only brother in the class. You see what I'm saying? I'm talking about when I went to like art college. That's why I was not happy with my experience in college, because I felt like my people weren't represented, male or female. So there was very few brothers and almost no sisters. Not saying they didn't have an interest, they weren't in my classes. Yeah, and I can't change that experience for what it was. And a lot of dudes I knew said the same thing. You see what I'm saying? But for women, there were a lot of white girls and there were a lot of Asian girls. You see what I'm saying? But now when I go to like speak at SCAD and things like that, there's like a plethora of them, like the landscape. Landscape, even for black men, the plethora has changed. So that's something that to me, I like to see it, and I knew these things were going to happen. And I lived through those eras. I lived through those eras from 83, 84. I started airbrushing 83, 84, at 19. And I've done thousands of shirts. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not speaking from an outside perspective. It's like I was there during all these periods. You know what I'm saying? And then even when people weren't talking about the comics and stuff like that, we were moving tens of thousands of comics like monthly when people weren't even talking about comics.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I have a perspective on it from like, I know what I'm talking about. But but it's all good. It's not even a thing that's a challenge. It's like something that it's just an experience. I feel like it just needed to change in terms of like this whole plane, this whole playing field.
Yeah, well, I also think that also in that time when you guys were starting and there was like the black and white boom and all that, and out of that came the Borders girls. The girls, when you were going to Borders, there would be like all these female readers that you didn't see in the regular comic book store that much, but they were in there reading the anime and the manga stuff, right? They were in there looking at that stuff. And I think it really, that's where the big growth started coming out of that for like the last, 15, 20 years, because I would say the same thing. I've been teaching about 20 years, and there was always more. I would always say the student body was probably at least 50% white women in art school, but it's much more diverse now, especially I'm sure in a place like Atlanta where SCAD is. You're getting a lot more diversity, because I think people think like, oh, well, I can be an animator. I can, when we were a kid, you might see Wonderful World of Disney and they showed the 9 old men, here's Frank Thomas making something or whatever. Now you can go on and you can see people that look like you.
Yeah.
Right. And there's lots of films and lots of art and lots of made of things where you see people that look like you in the industry, which is even more than when I started in animation in like 96. And it's even more, it's way more that way than even it was then.
Yeah, because even mid 90s for Black artists there was like few. It's like a lot more now than then. Like when I went to LA, I remember I met a few Black animators. There was more, but it wasn't like there was and then we didn't have social media too to link everybody. So
right.
That's the difference between then and now. Now you have the social media. People can link up. You can go on other people's pages. So the culture has changed. You had to kind of find people back then, and like one of the things you mentioned before. Earlier when we were talking about when you sign autographs, some people are standoffish and some people are wide open and approachable. It's the same when you meet other animators in the field. Some of them are willing to share, and some of them it's like, well, you're not going to get where I'm at,
Yeah.
And, we don't need to, what I'm saying? And to me, I've always been like, somebody want to know how to make comics, I show them where to go. This is how you do it. This is the paper I used. You don't have to do it. You could do whatever you want. I brought so many kids through the studios, like all ages, people. Every studio I was at, I brought tons of kids through, because I said, I don't know how long I'm gonna be here, but I'm gonna bring as many as I can, because even when I was at Classy Trooper, I was the only Black person in that whole building.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Do you? If there was, now I ain't gonna lie, if there was another one, I didn't see him. He could have been there, but I didn't see him.
You guys are circling perfectly.
He was on the east side of the building. He's in the west wing.
Yeah. If both of you were in the building on the same side, it would tilt. Right. I had a question, Dawud. Did you run into any of the kids that you taught, or anybody that else worked at the shop? Has anybody approached you later on in life?
Oh, that from the big city store you're talking about?
Yeah.
Like students, ex-students and stuff?
Yeah, any
who made it? Like who?
Like any shorties that you taught back at the old building.
They show up, and they're big.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people who, a lot of people working in the industry, they give credit to Big City Comics, BROTHERMAN, myself, or my brother Guy's writing. One interesting story was when I came down here and I had a setup, and one brother came up, he had the big beard, like the Rick Ross type beard.
Yeah.
And he was standing in front of my table, and he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" And I was looking at him. You look kind of familiar. I didn't know who he was. And he said, and here I'm in Atlanta, so I'm not thinking Philly. I'm like, who's this guy? And he said, "You had a store in Philly called Big City Comics World Headquarters, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You taught art classes, right?" I said, "Yeah." I was one of them kids. And when I looked at his face, I saw the little kid face behind the big Rick Ross beard. And I remember him and this other brother, they were like kind of like the older kids in class. And I said, "Yo, what's up?" And then he said, "Man, I learned so much in your art class." He said, "This is what I do now." He said he raps with Bone Crusher and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Showing me his shirts. Like he said, "I owe this to you," because he does all this artwork and stuff now. And he said, "Man, I remember my mom took me back to enroll me into the art class for the next season, and y'all were gone."
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, man. I cried. I was like, "Mom, Big City Comics is gone. Mom, what are we gonna do?"
Right.
He said, "I ain't gonna lie." And then he said, "Yeah." He said, "Cause he said, man, back in those days," he said, that's when Philly was off the chain. He said, "Man, people was dying, man." And he said, Big City Comics was like, y'all don't realize like what that meant to the neighborhood. And he said, like it gave them a place. He said they just felt safe there. It felt safe, and it felt like a place that was for him to cultivate his art. You know what I'm saying? Because when my dad died, we just shut down and closed up everything and left.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And we broke the lease and everything. And that's when I said, that's when things changed. That's when I changed my name, all that stuff. So people really couldn't find me for a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So for that to come back, and that's just one story. I ran into some kid somewhere, and he learned off my Drawing from the Soul video. That's an arts instructional video I made in 1999. And I didn't realize like 15 years had went by, and he was working professionally in the industry. And so there's a lot of people who are now doing things professionally in the industry. I mean, it's like a plethora of them that it gets to a point where I can't even remember them all now. I'm just happy because I say I didn't do any of this myself. I said, I always understood since I was a kid that I'm a conduit. I don't make up these ideas. They pop in my head. They're coming from the creator. And my role is to show you what the creator wants you to see. And I'm doing it to the best of my ability. It may even be bigger than the way I'm drawing it, but I get these messages. Like, to me, drawing big city is like, say you draw Brooklyn, it's already there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So when I draw the streets, and I know the east side, the west side, I know the place where the old money is, the place where you don't want to go down here, the place of, this is the nice neighborhood right here. That's the exclusive neighborhood. There's a nice island over here right off the coast.
Right.
There's a historical center. You know what I mean? It's a universe.
Right.
It's not a one track place.
Right.
But to me, I don't really consciously make up those places. I just see it and then I draw it. And then when we do the 360 world, we say, okay, let's go to this neighborhood and show them what this neighborhood looks like. Let's go to this one and show them what that neighborhood looks like. But I always stay in touch with the ethereal and my higher self, because if I don't, Brother Man won't be what it is if I just thought on this level.
Right.
It would just be a hood comic. But because I don't think like that, it goes to this level of bringing people back to their greater selves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just put your finger on something really important. Go ahead, Mike. Mike, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I guess when it really comes full circle, it will be like somebody you inspired who hires you for a job. You know what I mean? When you go all the way through, and then that person moves up, and then they want to come back and hire the guy that inspired them.
That happened. That's
already happened.
That's how this came about. Kwame Alexander was a fan of Brother Man 20 years ago, and now he's like one of the hottest young writers for Huffington Mifflin. and he called me up because he wanted to put me on. I didn't apply for any of those jobs with Huffington Mifflin. He hit me up and he put me on, and I always appreciated that. So the efforts have came back. It's like that constant boomerang effect coming back. That's why when we were talking before about signing autographs, and why would I get tired of signing an autograph? Why would I get tired? Why would I brush off a kid or a person who wants to ask a question? You know what I'm saying? It's like you never know where people are going to be in life. And, one day you'll be walking down the street. Hopefully I won't walk down the street and need 25 cents, but hopefully somebody help. Give me $1.
No, I feel that. So I always wondered, we've talked a little bit like at shows and stuff like this. And one thing I always wanted to kind of ask you about was kind of the overarching influence that this book has created. And Mike and I talked a little bit right before you jumped into the green room, and we were talking about how a lot of fans of things don't really understand why things end. Kind of like talking about the student you ran into later, who just probably those beyond the scope of his comprehension to know why Big City World Headquarters was gone. But why isn't it back? Or when is it coming back? Or when are you going to do another one? So I know there are a lot of people who probably don't know that you're still creating, because the last thing to that, before 2015, the last BROTHERMAN book was 11. I used to like that. What happened to that? I guess it's over. So, and even with Mike, with his run on Darkhawk, Mike went on to do a lot of other great things, but there are Darkhawk fans who just come up to Mike on the strength of that. And like, Mike, when are you going to work on more Darkhawk? What's up with Darkhawk?
Right. Yeah. That's funny.
So do you feel not like not an allegiance, that's the wrong word, but do you feel like a pressure to create more, even if you can't really fit it into your calendar, just to kind of keep it alive, or to scratch the itch of those people that just want BROTHERMAN, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I say yes and no, because I think for a long time it did bother me that there was an incomplete story and it was all tied into the family, and it's really emotional for me for a long time dealing with, because to me, BROTHERMAN was the expression of the family. It wasn't a comic book. Right. It was a mythology based on the teachings of my parents. And not only my parents, but the people in the community, the people that my parents brought through the home. They brought a lot of very influential people through the home. Even, like Molefe Asante, who coined the term Afrocentricity, Dr. Lynn Jeffries, John Henrik Clark, Sonia Sanchez, they knew people like that who were working within the community. And then a lot of people who me and my brother Guy said go to the grave unknown, but they did a lot for the community. Mm-hmm. And we said, well, who's writing songs for them? Who's creating adventures about them? Some of our uncles or aunts who were dedicated to teaching music lessons to kids, and all the kids loved them, but then they died. And who wrote a story about them? Mm-hmm. So Guy pulls a lot of their energy and puts it into the book and makes character. That's why Guy has so many characters, because there's so many people in our lives. Yeah. And Guy pulls from them and puts them in the book. So they're existing. They're forever. A libation is being poured for them forever. We know where that energy is coming from. So to me, when it ends, it's not a comic book. It ends. To me, it's an ancestral story that's meant to feed, to keep memories alive through an intellectual property. You see what I'm saying? So that becomes more connected to your heart. Now, if BROTHERMAN was just a story about, a guy beats people up and blah, 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 it ends. All right, I'll move on to the next thing. Right. But it had a lot more, I feel like it never manifested to what it's really supposed to be at that time. But it will be, because we have a lot of plans and things we're going to do, and people will see. Because when it's in its full expression, I think people will see that really this is more like Star Wars. And I tried to say that to people a long time ago. It's more like Star Wars and less of a Boys in the Hood type thing, because when you create this universe and the camera angles and the dynamics and the quality of it and the music and the next level of music of how we want to do it, that reaches back through the ages of our soul, it'll be like something people haven't seen before. And I'd rather it not be done than you just throw it together to say, oh, here's your black superhero movie, and then you move on to the next thing, and it made no impact.
Right. And it seems like people are always starving for something that's authentic, right? And when you create something so authentic, people don't know how to put it in a box, right? They're like, this is so raw, I don't know what to do with this.
Well, it's all about, I mean, Hollywood is all about the box. Like, what box are you in? Because we got to market it to this box, and we got to market it to that box. Right.
We can't market this movie, right? We can't market this book, right?
And it's sort of a double-edged sword, because Hollywood is kind of a mirror, and they really only try to put out what they think people will like, and then people get mad and go, "Oh, all this stuff sucks," but they're still watching it, which is why they're still making it. And I think that when you guys are approaching it more like fine art, in where you're trying to please yourself first, and it's always hard to marry that kind of deep personal project with the outside expectation of a consumer, because they might not even know what you just said, that all that stuff you just said, that might not even register to them why they like it. Because people project also other things into something you create, right? So you could talk about this higher level, spiritual, intellectual. They project some other thing into it. You know, you're getting something else out of that. You know, you can put a picture of a tree on a wall, and you can have 100 people look at it, and each person's going to tell you something completely different about it. And I think with comics, what you're doing is almost more like maybe like what the French did, guys like Mobius did, where they were trying to sort of please themselves first, and then everybody else reacts to that because it's different. You know, like you're looking at Arzak or something like that, which was not like anything else you were reading. Because, you know, when I saw that stuff as a teenager, I had never seen anything like that. I was familiar with the American stuff, but I had never seen anything like the French stuff. And it's like, where is that stuff coming from?
I wanted to give a shout out to your brother Guy, because every time I see him, I try to get some of his books. So I'll put this on screen. And I think you illustrated all of the covers.
I did just about all his book covers.
I love the Duke Denham series.
Yeah, we're up to number 6 now.
What? I'm missing like 4 of them.
You gotta get up on it.
I gotta get up on that. That's what's up. I have like a couple more questions, and then we're gonna let you go for the night. I appreciate you putting the time in with us tonight. I hope you have fun hanging out with us and chopping it up.
I'm enjoying myself. I appreciate it.
That's good. That's good, man. So I have a great question from our matron saint, Mama Carla. Carla always asks really great questions and is a fan of everything we do. Appreciate her. She said, what was the hardest part about creating Brother Man? And there's another slide here. Was it the stories or the images? So maybe if you could talk to any of that, like, was there, I don't know.
Was one easier than the other?
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't really hard. It was just natural. It was like, he said, Guy, we're going to do a comic book and introduce it at the Black Expo in 1990. And this was in November 89. And the guy drove up to Jersey from Delaware. And he said, all right, give me 2 weeks. He went home, came back. He said, here's the script. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I started drawing. And it was everything just flowed. And a lot of the images in Brother Man, like, I felt like I would say the hardest part really was I didn't know how comic books were made. So my boy Reggie Byers.
Shout out to Reggie Byers.
Shout out to Reggie Byers. He had Victory Comics, and me and Reggie been cool since '85. I met him when I used to work at the gallery. And he was the first. No, he was the second brother I met that did comics. Before him, it was Dwayne Ferguson. At the time, he was doing Hamster Vice, and Reggie was doing Shuriken, and he had Victory Comics, and Reggie was the one who said, "Get this kind of paper, get this kind of brush and ink, get the blue pencil, blah blah blah," and he showed me how he did it, and that's all I knew. Wow. So to me, I started off trying to do that, and I just felt like I just can't work like this. So by Brotherman #2, I stopped using rulers. I stopped using that ink. I stopped doing it the traditional way and said, I'm going to draw like I'm drawing in my sketchbook. So that's why the style changed by the time Brotherman #3 came out. And then by #4, then I started putting more of myself into it, So it was like an evolution, but I wouldn't say it was hard. It was just, it was exciting the whole time. Every aspect of it was exciting. There was never really, even going up against the quote unquote powers that be, because we're really outside the comic industry, and we weren't always welcome into all the circles in the comic industry. And some let us know that, but we didn't care. We liked when we got pushback. You know, we got banned from Toys R Us. You know, that was a big deal and stuff like that. But even that, like Toys R Us banned us. I mean, it just gives you a sense of
how did they ban you?
Yeah, tell that story real quick. Yeah.
I mean, that's all archived at Auburn Avenue Research Library because it was a big thing. I mean, there was a boycott against Toys R Us, BET News, Ed Gordon. I mean, it was like one of the top stories. They called Toys R Us, and Toys R Us was avoiding their phone calls because Toys R Us thought they were going to just wipe it under the rug. And they didn't realize how big Brotherman fan base was. And we got into Toys R Us the same time Todd McFarlane got spawned into Toys R Us. Because when I listened to his story, I was like, wow, that's the same time period that we got into Toys R Us, but we got yanked out of Toys R Us. So we didn't get a chance to like shoot through the stratosphere like Spawn did. You see what I'm saying? So basically we got in there through a buyer. It was somebody who was a fan of Brotherman. And at that time, Toys R Us had a comic section, but there was no exclusivity on it. So he said, I can get y'all into Toys R Us. So we went in legit. We went in there. We were a vendor. They ordered tons of books. The books started selling immediately before we even promoted that we were in there. People just went in and said, yo, Brotherman's in Toys R Us. Right. And then all of a sudden, Toys R Us froze the sales and said, oh, we got all these letters of complaints. But they never to this day showed the letters of complaints. They said they had 4 letters of complaints. So then we said, okay, so if me and 3 other people say we don't like Barbie, will you freeze the sales of Barbie? And that's when they realized that they were in this, basically their hands were tied because they made themselves look bad. And then I had radio shows where people were calling in. They were talking about Toys R Us, calling it Toys of Them. They were boycotting Toys R Us. And then the vice president of Toys R Us flew out to apologize to our family and with our lawyer. But then he was saying, well, we have to approve your books before we can carry in Toys R Us. And we said, we don't work for y'all. Y'all just distribute our comics. Do you approve Marvel's books? Do you approve DC's books? Right. That's when my dad was still with us. It was, the family was sitting in the circle. And then they didn't have an answer for that. So it was a stalemate. They said, oh, we'll bring you back in Toys R Us, but we have to look at your books. I said, y'all don't censor us. We don't work for you. You know what I'm saying? So then we never went back into Toys R Us. So we took a big hit off of that. And it also impacted us because people said, oh, that's the book that was banned from Toys R Us. So people so those people who don't know Brotherman was like, oh, that book is probably like, it's probably a ghetto comic, this, that, and other thing. Right. Because, oh, yeah, I can imagine a black comic getting banned from Toys R Us. And then that was like a black eye to us. So a lot of things affected us from fully advancing because of things like that. So I would say those things were I won't say hard. It was challenging, but to me, it was I kind of liked the challenge because it was like it goes to show that there's power here. There's something that's happening here because if it wasn't all that,
you have no resistance, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people don't also realize when you go into business. You have copyrights and you have trademarks and all. You got to spend money. You got to spend money to make money. You got to spend money to protect your rights, to protect your to protect your interests. It's not just like, I'm going to create a character and just put it out there and then people are going to buy it. And, you know, I mean, companies like Disney have buildings full of people who just do stuff like your lawyer did, right? And I think that that's something that artists don't, we're thinking about, like you said, the creative thing. You're not thinking about the other thing, but then you have to think like a businessman. You got to take the artist smock off, and you got to put on the clip tie. And so you guys never got back into Toys R Us after that, or?
Nope. And Toys R Us out of business now, so.
Dawud, I have another.
Still here though.
I have another question from Big Tim Fielder, and I think you know Tim. Tim's a fantastic cartoonist and graphic novelist. Tim asks, he says, this is a statement. I remember when my brother and I met you guys at Black Expo in '94. You guys drove a burgundy van. That's very vivid, Tim.
GMC.
Could you share what it was like hitting the roads back then to move your product, the non-glamorous part, please? Do you have any road stories?
Yeah, I almost had an accident, like sliding on the ice, going through the Tennessee mountains, getting stopped by cops. One cop took me out the van and had me sit in his car in Tennessee. I didn't know what was coming next. And he said, what you got in the back of this van? He said, comic books. He just swore I was going to say drug.
Right. Comic book. That is a drug.
And my brother, I ain't gonna lie, sometimes me and him will have arguments and we gotta drive in the car argument. But that never stopped us. You know, we're brothers, sometimes that's me and my brother Jason. But we would still get the job done. And a lot of people don't realize I drew a lot of the Brotherman comic in the van. So we'll be driving cross country and I'm working on the next issue while we're coming back from a trade show. So a lot of times I was uncomfortable drawing Brotherman. So even when I look back at the pages, it's like, man, I was uncomfortable when I drawn that. So because Brotherman has that cramped, tight feeling, because I was never in the space like I am now with my Wacom tablet, I'm relaxed, whatever. Brotherman was like drawn under duress really for the 4 years I was doing it. Wow. And one of the most unique things is when I saw a UFO when we were driving through New Mexico. We were passing Albuquerque, and I saw a red light. It was 3 o'clock in the morning because we didn't like stopping at hotels because that was more money we had to spend. So we would drive straight from LA all the way back to Dallas or Dallas to Chicago, and we were driving all over the country. And so it was like 3 in the morning. I saw a red light in the sky. I'm laying in the back among the comic books, and my brother was driving, and the red light. And I was like, "Is that a helicopter?" But it was just sitting there. Then I said, "That looks like a star." But it looks like it's on the horizon line, and it went right to the light. You know how like a shooting star? Yeah, said sedentary, and then all of a sudden it shoots straight to the left in a straight line, and it shoots straight up into the. Then it changed direction and went the other way. If I didn't see it, I wouldn't believe. I'd be like, "You lying." And then I said to my brother, he was blasting music, and I said, "Jason, did you see that?" He said, "What?" I said, "That UFO." He said, "No," and turned the music back up. So I went back to sleep. But I saw a UFO.
Yo, that's wild.
And we were in that GMC truck, the burgundy GMC truck. We put like 100,000 miles in that in 1 year.
Oh wow, you guys really burnt the road up, but that's what you had to do, right? But
like Brotherman meets Abbott and Costello and the UFO.
That's great. I think I have two more. I have a couple statements. First, our buddy Jerry Kraft, the Newbery Medal Award-winning Jerry Kraft, new kid. Yeah. Jerry says the first fan letter I ever wrote was to Dawud, and he answered it. But he said he won't answer me anymore.
Now he know he lying. You know I'll write him back. Send me an email, Jerry. I'll write you back. Matter of fact, I have new kid. I got his new. Yeah, congratulations to Jerry.
That's great. I think this is going to be our last big bite for the night. So our good buddy J. Robert Deans, or JRD as we call him in the street. Question for me and Dawud. As you both came up, making your way and learning the histories of other Black cartoonists and artists, was Matt Baker taught at all, given he's thought to be the first Black artist in comics? And if I'm not mistaken, Matt Baker did Phantom Lady back in the day. Dawud, how do you feel about that? Or even to, like, once you got into the industry, so to speak, did you start researching or finding out about other creatives that were already there before you got there?
Yeah, we found out about a lot of people after we got into it. Like, I didn't get into it as a comic historian. We just got into it to do what we wanted to do. You know, I was familiar with Golden Legacy comics, you know, before us. Even this other gentleman, Ralph Stevenson, did a comic called Magic. It was a young kid that went around the world, went to Africa and stuff like that. And that was like in the 80s when that came out. And then, you know, then I learned about, you know, all Negro comics. And basically, I learned a lot more about Black comics as articles were being written on us. Other people were doing research and writing about it. But even when we came out, we never said Brother Man was the first Black comic. We always said Brother Man was unique because it was a Black character in an all-Black universe created by a Black family. That was what was unique about it. Because I never discredit people before me. I always honor people before me. And if there were people before me, I'd be like, bet. You know what I mean? I don't know everything. I just know at our point in time, this is what we did. And then Brother Man opened the doors to a new age in Black comics. You see what I'm saying? But it's not to discount, because even Turtel on Lee, you know, I met him later and he was doing things before us, but I didn't know him. But because I didn't know him doesn't mean he doesn't exist. But now that I know him, I acknowledge him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't discredit anybody. Even like my man Reggie Byers. I was airbrushing T-shirts when he had Victory Comics. I always say Reggie's the one to put me on. Dwayne Ferguson did Hamster Vice and went on to do Captain Africa. He and I went to Rutgers University. He was the other brother. When I say there was not many Black people in the art department. Dwayne Ferguson was the other brother that one of the other brothers that was in the art department, but I didn't really know him back then. I just knew, wow, this brother, he does comic books. So I always know there's somebody doing it, but you know, I wasn't the researcher. My focus was, I'm trying to get this thing done. And what we were trying to create was basically like what LucasArts is doing, but it's starting with a comic book. So, so my mind wasn't really comics. I was thinking film and movies.
So you weren't thinking like, you weren't aware of like Billy Graham or Keith Pollard or
Grass Green
or Ron Wilson, the guys who were doing stuff for Marvel. Were you aware of that then?
I mean, I knew I didn't know Billy Graham was Black. I kept thinking of when I was a kid, I was thinking of the Graham, like
the Billy Graham, right? Yeah, the other Billy Graham, right?
You know, and like I said, it by the time Brother Man came around, my head wasn't about comics, and Brother Man fell into the category of comics, and people may make the assumption that my mind was into comics, but I don't have conversations really with people about comic books. That's why I do film stuff. That's why I do storyboards, film. My son does film. He does special effects for major films and things like that, because that's what I cultivated in the house, is more like film, things that are theatrical, and the comic book is a ancillary product to your intellectual property. You know what I'm saying? So I look at it from that perspective. So if somebody comes up and say, hey, you know, there was a guy such and such and such, I'm not denying it. I said, okay, now I know. I didn't know, but I wasn't in this as a historian to comics. You know what I'm saying? And if I learned something, you know, it's just like graffiti. I was really more into graffiti than comics. And hip hop. So I would know a lot about that history. And if there was somebody that was doing something in that realm, then I acknowledged them. But there's somebody I didn't know, then now I do know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I have the same conversations with people about stuff, because it's kind of my origin story, though, is that I came up on comic strips, right? And my microfilm in my head, my microfiche, like back in the library, is all comic strip stuff. you know, and the comic book stuff came later. You know, I could tell you all about, you know, comic strip artists going back to like the Yellow Kid and all that stuff. But when people talk about a lot of comic book artists from the 70s and 80s, like I didn't know about Jack Kirby until I was like in my 20s, you know, because I didn't grow up on that or even knowing the names of these cats. So like I feel that, but I could talk about graffiti all day. I hit you up on Instagram all the time, like
conversation on that one day.
Yeah. See, I wouldn't know anything about graffiti because I was like, that was not something that when we left Detroit, people weren't really doing graffiti.
Yeah,
I think that's something that happened in the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, like late 70s.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the first, I think the first professional cartoonist I ever met was Keith Pollard because he was from Detroit. That's where I was living, and Michigan. And I remember going to a convention, and I had no idea he was black, right? Because you couldn't tell by like, you can't look at some guy drawing Thor and go, that's a black drawing. That's a drawing by a black guy. You know, he had no idea. So I remember going, and then later on, I think I found out about Ron Wilson. So there were a few guys in that era who were working in the mainstream, but it was you were sort of disconnected from it because there were certain people that were promoted within, you know, Stan would promote people. And so you kind of knew John Romita or Jack Kirby or certain people. So it was sort of like a surprise that Keith Pollard was black because there was nothing about it, right? There was nothing about like, oh, our black artist or something like that.
Right. They were spotlighting him. Right?
Yeah. Just like, you know, when the Black Panther came out, the narrative in the media was not that it was created, that the character was created by two middle-aged Jewish dudes, right? It was like the Black Panther is a black guy, and he, you know, and that was what they were selling. Yeah. They weren't selling the idea; they were selling all the other stuff about the character. Not that the two guys who came up with the concept were middle-aged Jewish guys from New York City, which I think is actually a very interesting story at the time that those guys came up with that.
Well, I guess, I'll just add this. I know you said that's the last question. I'll just
well, I got one more, but go ahead, and then we'll get you out of here.
What you just said there is the reason why, to me, it wasn't really so much about the comic book or the black artist or whatever, because to me, what the whole idea of Big City Comics was to create a movement in independent thought. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could have a black guy who worked at Marvel or a black guy that worked somewhere doing something, whatever. And it's not, you know, that's cool. I mean, all that's great, but that wasn't our mission. Our mission was creating an industry. When you create an industry, it's like you're creating a hub for all these people who are creative, musicians, dancers, voiceover artists, comic book artists, filmmakers. In Big City Comics, that's what the objective, and that's still the objective. It's bigger than comic books. It's about, you know, creating this whole production facility. And to me, working at those production studios was, oh, now I'm working at Ground Zero on Rugrats, and I'm sitting down with the director. I can pick his brain. I can ask him this and that. So at working on the studios, I learned how this stuff worked. Now it's all about, okay, now I just got to find the resources and the money to do it. But I want to do it in a way where people haven't seen it. They haven't seen it done like this before. You see what I'm saying? Then those people who work at these other places, they can come work here.
Right.
Because now they're working in a place where the culture is you expressing you, and you're getting paid like the industry. Because we're generating revenue like the industry. You're getting paid like that, but you're creating stuff every day that's on a level like the movie Black Panther. But you don't have to wait for that to come every 10 years. We're doing that every day. You see what I'm saying? So that's why it's like I don't really get caught up in like this and that. You know what I mean? Because like I said, if I made a movie about an Asian hero or whatever, a lot of Asians will look at basically the paper trail and say, well, that's not, it stars somebody, it's the image, but it's not our industry. They support their industry. So to me, I don't get caught up on the image or just the image of a black superhero that was created by a white person or a black person that worked on a white character or something like that. That's cool. I'm not knocking any of that. All that is good. I'm just saying my mission was to create something that's sustaining, just like Big City, the universe exists in the comic. You create it in the real world, a place that's sovereign, that creates opportunity for future generations. And I got but so much time to create that while I'm here. So then when I'm on, it continues to build and get bigger and bigger.
Gotcha. No, I love it. All right, last question, and then you get to go pee. Right. All right, Tim closes the show. One more question. Dawud, you are renowned for your amazing cartooning work, but for me, meaning him, but for him, the thing I'm most floored by your work is your painting. I've always wondered if a fully rendered book was ever in your future, or are you done? Thanks, Tim.
Well, I'm not done. I'll put it like that. And it's cool hearing that from Tim, because I always admired Tim's work since he did like Black Metropolis and his renderings, his lighting. Because I even asked him like because his stuff is so epic and theatrical in terms of his lighting. That's the type of stuff that I like. Yeah. And so that makes sense that Tim would ask that type of question. And actually, I was talking to John Jennings about that, because John Jennings was pushing me to do something like that, and I would like to. So that's why I said I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it. It's just it would probably be a part of the many things that I want to do moving forward.
I have to say that you've been a huge beacon of light for my career. Like, I probably wouldn't have done Detective Boogaloo Hip Hop Cop if it wasn't for Brother Man that came first. And just like having that kind of energy and vibration go through my work, and also have a higher message, which a lot of people miss if they're not looking for it. The nuance is something that I think is sorely missed in a lot of work that I tried to make sure I put into my stuff, and that directly is a tip of my bucket hat to you, sir. So I appreciate you being on tonight. And where can people find you online or on socials?
Well, I'm primarily on Instagram, and it's at BROTHERMAN Comics with the X. The BROTHERMAN COMIX. And other than that is my website, brothermancomics.com, and that's Brotherman COMICS. Not trying to confuse you, but that's part.
It is what it is. What it is.
What? Yeah. But I got a lot of things I'm gonna, over the years, like I said, I've been working on so many other things that, like, my website needs to be updated. A lot of things need to be updated, and Brother Man really hasn't been given the proper attention. So I don't expect you to go there and it's going to be like this big blown out thing until I get back to that, because I've been working on these film projects and book projects and things like that to sustain and to build, so then I can go back and do Big City Entertainment properly.
Very good, very good. Well, I will definitely be in line. And also, I got a copy of Brother Man poster from you, and I need one for the studio.
All right.
So we'll have to work that out off camera.
Yeah, I think I have one here.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. It pays to know people.
There you go. All the time.
All the time. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been an honor having you on the show. I hope you get to come back again if you have the time in the near future.
Just give the word.
Do you have any? Would you have any advice before we go for a young Black or artist of color who's like, say, teenage years and thinking about doing this? Would you have some advice that you think might be helpful?
Yeah, I think the main thing I always say to any young person pursuing this, which really to me it's across the board, whatever they want to do, to be diligent in whatever you do. Like, basically, if this is something you want to do it. Meaning, like, sometimes should I do a comic book? What do y'all think? You know, people put up posts. What do y'all think? Should I do this or should I do this? It's like you should do what you want to put out, because then what happens is the audience is driving you. You know what I mean? So, and sometimes when you put yourself out there and you're confident about what you're doing, let that find its audience. You know what I mean? Regardless if you're singing or making comic books or you want to make a movie or whatever, you know, and I call it drawing from the soul, because only you know what's in your soul. That's why I said, I don't worry about if somebody sets up next to me. I don't worry about if somebody makes another black comic book, because they're not me. They can never tell my story. They can mimic it, and I can never tell their story. Yeah. So when we came out with BROTHERMAN, we didn't ask people, what do y'all think about this? Because people could have easily said, no, I don't think you should do that. You know, you always got to have, you know, a white guy in his ear to tell him how to be a hero. You know, that's how and then I would be like, oh, okay, yeah. And then it never would have been what it was. So you have to be you. You have to tell your story, and also study the arts, not just like a comic book, or I just studied anime or something like that. Because even anime artists, they know fine arts. They study figure drawing. They study color theory. They study composition, perspective, lighting, dynamic posing. You know, because a lot of people, they jump into comic books and they think they're just drawing a cartoon, and they don't realize, like, man, you know, it's lacking that kick, that punch. You know, it's just like if somebody's going to sing, you know, maybe take some vocal lessons or things like that. You know, sometimes those basic things that you think you're big in, they enhance your greatness. So just always, you know, every once in a while, go back, do some figure drawings, or if you're going to do a film class, you know, study the greats, study the masters. You know, just like I said, I didn't know certain people, but I'm not closed to it. If somebody put me onto some knowledge, I'm like, yo, thanks. And then now I know that person. And then I add that to my level of growth, because we're all students. We're always constantly living. We're always constantly growing. So, you know, so just be open-minded and be positive about the things you're doing. And circle yourself around people that support you. And you got to kind of shake off those people that doubt you, because that's going to have a big part of your growth process.
Yeah, I think that's really important, especially like if you're working in film, you're working with people that are literate about film, and you want to be able to speak to them on the same level. So if they bring up something and you go, well, I don't know, the last 10 people that person mentioned, that's not good for you. Right.
Yeah, like I never see you. I don't know Hitchcock. Yeah.
But the good news is now you know you can study. So the 11th conversation, oh yeah, I know him. That's such and such. He worked on this, that, and you know, because now from here forward, that will never happen again. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. That's why I say it's continuous growth. Just always think of yourself as that student, and you humble yourself, but you don't have to like be a sucker either. Like to the point where people run over you. It's just like you humble yourself, but you also stand in your power.
Yeah. Well, I guess I think that's really interesting that you going and doing all these various things in animation, because each project, as you know, is like a way of gaining some knowledge about something. You know, like this budget might be less, so you have to think about how to stage things, or you can't only draw characters from certain angles. So it's like everything that you're doing. It was interesting to read your resume to see all these things that I wouldn't think that would have been something that you would have worked on, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? But each thing is contributing to your growth as an artist, you know?
That's how it works.
All right. Thank you so much, bro. It was great having you on. I hope you had a good experience on Pencil to Pencil, and I'll be looking to book you soon.
All right, Jamar, Mike, I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Great to meet you.
Everybody who tuned in. I can't see them, but I appreciate everybody who, you know, had questions and stuff. I appreciate that.
All right. Great. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks.
Have a good night, bro.
All right, you too.
Okay, bye-bye. Yeah, kicked him. That's my favorite part.
You and your kicking.
That was a
You need
great
to talk to
conversation.
somebody about your kicking, Jamar.
I have a kicking
I'm gonna
problem.
put you in a timeout. I'm gonna put you in a timeout.
And another great Philadelphian, Mike Manley.
I know it's like we've been had. How many Philadelphians have we had? We had more Philadelphians than anybody.
I know.
Than any other city. But I think it's one of those cities where there's like a hub, like Philly's a hub city where there's like a whole bunch of artists. Like Detroit, there was the guys that were like Keith Pollard and those. That Detroit was a hub there for a while. There was a lot of guys like Terry Austin and Keith Pollard and Mike Grell and Alan Milgram and Jim Starlin. There was a whole bunch of guys like in the early mid '70s that came out of Detroit. I think Rich Buckler.
Wow.
All those guys. There was a lot of Detroit guys that went into to comics.
I didn't know there were so many Detroit guys.
Oh yeah, there's a lot. Vosburgh. There's a ton of people.
It's funny. I was on Scott Kurtz's drawing stream the other night, and they were talking about. Somehow we started talking about Hall and Oates, and I was like, Hall and Oates are from Philly.
Yeah.
David Bacon's from Philly. Bradley Cooper's from Philly. Well, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like this laundry list of people, and I've always said, not that there's something in the water besides too much fluoride, Mike.
Water.
The water is something in the water. Is that Philadelphia is really a place where nobody loves you. So you get married to your craft, to like you hone things.
They love you when you're successful. Then they want to claim you. Then they want to put you right next to the art museum. Oh no, he's always been our favorite.
It's kind of true.
Yeah,
but
like, kid.
you don't. Philly isn't a false praise town. You know,
it's not even a praise town. It's hard to get that praise, John.
Yeah, and I've said as long as I've known you that like I've gotten more attention for my comic book work in different places. Like I have to leave to come back for people to go, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Because I think it's like there's so many people here doing stuff, and I think there's just like a veneer of disbelief until you do something with it. Right? That's great.
Yeah,
Everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a native Philadelphian, although I've lived here since '84, so almost 40 years. So I've actually lived in Philly longer than I lived in Michigan. But it's a very odd city in that way because, and so it's kind of got that. Yeah, it's kind of skeptical.
Yeah. People wanted to just talk about the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I said there's almost like there's 3 or 4 different cities. You have the South Philly people, which are kind of like the sports people, but then you have the Rittenhouse Square people, right? And then you have like the North Philly, or the 62% of Philadelphia that is black.
Yeah.
And so now sometimes those all
converge.
meet, but sometimes they don't. And so depending upon what, you could be an artist that doesn't track with the Philly people. They don't really care about maybe the art museum. Which they would go see the Rocky statue. They would not go to necessarily see a painting.
Right. They're not going to the art museum, but they'll go to the front of the art museum. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Yeah. And so it's
wait a minute. And as it's called in Philly, a lot of people know the art museum front area as the Rocky Steps.
Right.
That's kind of what it's called here.
Right. And there was that controversy, I think we were talking the other day, where they moved the Rocky statue from the stadium, the sports stadium, to the steps. And there was a big thing like, oh, heavens, no, we can't put that horrible sculpture, right? Because you had people that are like the main line, the blue blood people, like that. What? No, that's not real art.
Because they said the Rocky statue was a prop. It's not a piece of art. It's a movie prop.
Right. But the people who run the businesses for travel and destination and all that, they end up winning out, because when people come here, what do they want to see? The Liberty Bell, the Rocky statue. People come to town. That's what they want to see. So yeah, Philly's a sort of it's a hard art town.
Yeah, it's a very interesting place to be.
There's a lot of artists in it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of artists in Philadelphia,
Mm-hmm.
and so culturally amongst artists, it's very rich.
Yeah,
But it's they always want to cut the school art budget, right? They'll raise money in the street to support kids playing football. They got the can out.
Mm-hmm.
You never see people with the can out for the arts.
You can't afford it. Can't afford the can. So all right, we're going to start wrapping, but I wanted to address. We had a little flare up in the chat room earlier when we were talking about women in comics. So one thing I wanted to address with that is that I want to make sure that everybody feels well represented and welcome on the podcast, and what we're talking about covers all the aspects of the business and the art form and all of that. So one thing that I've been thinking about lately, Mike, is like the diversity of our guests, not like color, but just kind of like how many, women artists we've had on and all that kind of stuff. And it's always my goal and our goal to have a really good diverse mix up of people we have on. And we've reached out to a lot of people. So, and I say this a lot of time on my coffee break and even on here, that we reach out to people, they don't get back to us. Or there's conflicts or what have you, or maybe they're just a little sketchy. But
I've reached out to several female cartoonists who have not, I would say the majority of them have not ever responded. Mm-hmm. And my comment earlier was nothing negative about, women in the business or whatever. It was just when we were coming up, it was not common to see. Yeah. Now it is very common to see, which is great. It was just an observation, like the time that I came from. If I stood in line in Chicago, I didn't see a woman in line. It was all dudes. Yeah. Right? It was all dudes standing in line, Yeah. Now, maybe someday there was a woman standing in line, but I never saw that. No, on any of the conventions I went to, now you go to Artist Alley, it's probably at least half and half, right? At least half women, right? Right. So I think that's great, but I also think that that's probably because of manga, because of the anime. I think brought in a lot of women into the business because there's much more diverse storylines. It's not just Spider-Man fighting Dr. Octopus.
Right. The stories have expanded and the tone of things have expanded.
All you have to do, like I'm always saying, go look at webtoons. There's like a bajillion female artists out there creating stories. You'll see that on Instagram. There are so many women in animation now, which is a great thing. And even like I said, when I started, there was one female storyboard artist that I knew of on the show, the Batman show. I think there was one, and but most of the women were producers. They were not, and there maybe were some. I'm just talking about Warner Brothers. Then each studio I would go to, you would see, oh, there might be a woman over here, a woman over there, but it was still predominantly male. Now I think there's a lot more women working in the business, not just being the producer, but also being directors and being character designers. But that was not common in my I would say at least the first half of my career. So if you guys know some female artists you would love to have on the show, hey, tell them to get a hold of us. Send us some recommendations. We're always asking for that because I do too. I mean, I want to have as many people from all over the industry of comics, illustration, animation, and not just
the boys club, right?
Just right, yeah. It's not just the boys. The boys. I mean, my club is mostly men, just because of the product of the time that I came through. But I know a lot more female cartoonists in the last 10 years than I knew in the first 20 years of my career, just because that's who I was running into.
Right.
It's not even like you're going out of your way to avoid people or whatever. That's just like what you see when you go into the show, right? That's just what you see when you go into the office.
Right.
You know?
So that was a great editorial. But yeah, just just to put it out there, it's like no one is on our side of this fence going, okay, we need guy, girl, guy, girl, guy, girl, guy, girl. So I don't ever want people to think like we're stacking the deck with just men or just white guys or just, you know what I'm saying? It's just like we have Wednesdays and Saturdays open. We ask people if they respond, we put them in. If they,
I mean, we have probably 4 or 5. I know I have at least 4 or 5 people that have said that they want to do the show. Some are, and they're all jostling with like when they can do it. So I think that just the diversity of your hosts show that it's a diverse podcast.
So, and here's one thing I'm going to address this because GRD just put this on the thing. Maybe Wheezy, June Brigman, Katie Cook, and Mike's assistants could be a roundtable on this. I'm all for this, but I also don't want it. I don't want to put a spotlight on it like this is a special topic that nobody's addressing. Like I just want to have female cartoonists on the show. Like when Christine Larson was on, we never talked about any of that stuff, and it wasn't because I was avoiding it. It didn't come up. You know what I mean? But if that is like it's like somebody asked me later. I would have loved if you'd asked her how does it feel to be a female cartoonist, and I hear what they were saying, but it didn't cross my mind to ask that because we just vibe on the artwork.
Yeah,
so heavy,
people have their interests. Some people have agendas. Some people are political about it. Some people feel like historically certain people have been underrepresented, and so they should be more represented. As an artist, when I first look at a piece of a drawing or a painting or whatever, you can't really always tell whether it's a male or a female or whatever. And most of the people that I talk to, my female artist friends, we don't always talk about the gender issue. That was more of a thing when I was in the master's program, because that is an agenda thing with certain people and certain, political atmosphere. But I think most people who are working are just working. Most people who are doing storyboards, whether you're men or women, you're just working. Now, everybody does have different experiences, but I would say that, and I don't even hear, there are different conversations. And again, if you go to places like Twitter, people get very political and they kind of get in camps, but I'm not a camp person.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to be in a camp. If I've asked a couple people, female artists who have current webtoons, if they would be on the show, and they're all interested, but nobody's pulled the date yet because everybody's too busy, right? Mm-hmm. So I've asked a female political cartoonist. We've already had a female political cartoonist on.
Pulitzer Prize winning.
Right. So, it's not really about gender or about sex. It's just about who says yes next Wednesday.
Yeah. But no, I'm glad that we're addressing this, and it's something that I think about, and I want to make sure that, like I said, this is a safe space on the internet and everybody feels like their voice is important. But yeah, and there's some people that I would love to get on who, we know between the three of us, we know a lot of people, and some people we may have a passing, conversation.
And some people who have turned us down.
Oh yeah, that happens too.
There are some female readers, artists who have turned us down. So
yeah, there it is. So yeah, let's just keep moving forward. I want to give a shout out to our Saturday guest. The amazing Kari Randolph is going to be on the show. His book Excellence is amazing, and he's always doing really energetic, kinetic high profile work. I can't wait to get to know him a little better. We met a couple of years ago, just through mutual friends in the business. And we were just kind of like, oh man, I always wanted to meet you. We kind of had that Spider-Man pointing moment.
No.
We're like pointing at each
At
other.
least you didn't have to fight before you realized you were friends.
Yeah, we had to knock through some buildings before.
That's
like,
right.
oh.
You had to defeat the Rhino.
Well, yeah, Kari's a really great guy, and I can't wait to pick his brain on Saturday. So please join us then. And as I've been saying for the longest time, please, if you have questions for the show, when I drop that link for when we go live, put the questions there. It's easy for me to get to, and I want to be able to pay attention to our guests and not like swim through the chat. So yeah, like preload us with questions. It makes the show go a lot smoother. Mike, any parting words before we get out of here?
See you Saturday.
We'll see you Saturday, guys. We had a great time. Thanks again to Dawud Anyabwile for giving us his time in his evening.
Yes.
This is the Pencil to Pencil podcast, and we'll see you on Saturday, God willing. Don't forget to wash your hands. See you next time.